Crazy.
Well, we're on air.
You can read us in. Go ahead. Let's go to find out.
Okay. He's going to find out. So, I'll read us in. Hey, I'm Dave, and that's Mickey. And this is Platos Cave.
Oh, good looking.
On Revolution Radio. On Revolution.radio, that's the website name. And I'm doing this from memory.
Hello, hello.
Hello. This is going to be a great show, this one. The Revolution Radio is the home to fresh ideas. Buy some merchandise or
I have no sound. Sorry, guys.
Donate. I just want to make sure I'm sending now. It's got me all paranoid. Hang on a minute. Let me have a look at my settings. Audio. No, I can't do it when on the call. Hang on. Yes, I can. Let me keep looking. I know this is riveting stuff. I know. But hang on one second. Devices.
And here we are.
And you can hear me now, can you?
I can hear you just nicely.
Your end.
It seems to reset to default settings every time I restart my machine. It's hilarious.
Right. So join us in the chat room and talk to us while we're on air. Tune in to us online and on your smart device via an app, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. You can do that. You can access the station's archives for free. I would also suggest that you do that. And I'm broadcasting out of Darkajung, a very wet Darkajung country with localized flooding.
Oh yeah, and very, very wet Darug countries. Well, apparently, Dave. Let's finish. Go ahead.
Oh, well, that'll do. I'm all right with that.
Okay. Well, we like to, of course, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and future in our respective localized tribal areas. Dave, this is meant to be a 1 in a 500-year flood now.
Oh, that's great.
We had really bad floods fairly recently. I don't know if you remember that. I'm sure you do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do.
There was a 1 in a 100-year flood. There are actually a couple of them, probably 2 or 3, in fact. Yeah, and this one, it's a 1 in a 500-year flood, so much worse. They had a half a meter of rainfall in a very short time up there, so it is worse than what we saw before. And again, like I said, 1 in a 500 years. I want the next one must be a 1 in a 1,000-year flood. I'm sure we're due for 1 in a 1,000, right? That's what we need. 1 in a 1,000 flood.
That'd be good.
That would not be good. That would be.
Oh.
That would be very ungood. Once we get to the 1 in 15,000-year flood, we're at the Younger Dryas. Hey, hoppa, hiya, hoppa.
So I'm gonna say that on the screen I have a still from the video that was put out by ABC News this afternoon, talking about the last week of rain, and it doesn't say much about where I live, Mackie, to be honest, but that's irrelevant. The week totals are 662 mil up in the mountains, where it's currently flooding at the coast, who have already had 400 mil of rain. So the stuff that's up there will flow down the rivers. Tari's had 518 mil. If you want to know what this is like in inches of rain, 662 is 26 inches of rain. Just putting it out there. It's on screen. The calculator's right there. You can see it. You know what's going on. And it is a lot of rain. In fact, they've hit new total records for daily rain up there. And I've got to drive through there in about a week's time. And I hope that everything's okay with it. Yeah, I think probably a week's time. So I've had to delay my journey to go up coast and see my father. But just putting it out there, the rain is now coming back down the coast and should all be over as far as rain's concerned. Tomorrow, midday-ish or something like that, the sun should come out all up and down the coast. But next week, we're due for even more rain again. So with the sodden ground, I mean sodden, it's incapable of taking any more water at all. It's just going to flood very easily. So our valley flooded today and we had less than 50 mil. Normally it takes about 100 mil of rain in a couple of hours for our valley to flood. But it was only 50 mil and it hasn't stopped. And the valley is currently flooded again. They closed the school down when my daughter attends.
Oh, really?
Not today, but on Tuesday they closed the school. And let's see what happens, because it's every once in a while there's a super heavy rain event that occurs coming through here. I know you're getting it now in Sydney, so it's just one of those things. It's one of those things. But you know, once in 1,500 years, I like that. I like the cold open you did with that. It's really good. I like the younger dryers. Let's bring that on. And what about pole?
Let's
pole shift. Yeah.
Let's do all of those things. Let's not. Because there'd be precious little left of us. Interestingly, though, they've also closed all the sporting fields here in our neighborhood. So my daughter plays soccer, and she hasn't for a couple of days now. So,
well, you know how much you know how precious those fields are as far as maintenance is concerned. The cost. The people love their work, Mackie. I'm going to tell you, they don't just mow it and hope for the best. They really tend to it. The reason why there's no bindies on there is because the lawnskeeper is just fantastic. So when it rained up here, remember we had all the fires, then we had all the rains. Well, when we had all the rains, they closed everything. There's no sporting field at all that you could go on,
right,
because all you would do is sink into it and require maintenance to fix that. You know, you could twist an ankle later on when it dries out with someone's footprint in there. So, look, it makes sense. But this isn't the end. This seems like, if I was to plot it, I haven't done it, but if I plotted the rainfall over time, all of this rain event has exceeded our historical records. So there would be an I don't know what angle the line would be on, but it would certainly be showing a trend over the last 100 years of an increase in the amount of rain that falls during a rain event. We've seen that up in Lismore, where, you know, I think 18 meters wasn't sufficient as a warning height. It went to 22 meters. So, and when you're talking about meters of rain, that's just insane. I'm going to say that it's insane from the point of view of living in a postcard, where we don't expect anything to change ever. It's how it was when I got here. That's what it's going to be my whole life. Nothing's going to change, and of course we know that's a fallacy. So the low-lying areas that you see that are nice and flat, that have a river, unlike in, what do you call it? What's it called? Meandering through the valley. That river is in a floodplain. The only reason it's currently a river and not taking the whole floodplain is because it's not enough precipitation to make that floodplain fill up. And in Australia, everything around about 2 meters above sea level as flat floodplain probably was a shallow sea at some point. And a river will just happen to meander through it. In fact, those rivers have been there for such a long time, even during the Ice Age, where the sea level was lower, and you can see the river then go down onto the continental shelf, which is the equivalent to our 2 meter high above sea level floodplain. Just now that it's underwater. But if the sea level falls again, and the continental shelf, as we call it, that goes out to the drop-off, not the drop-off, you'll see a river cut into that as well. And that's where the river used to be when the sea level was lower. So they're identical, the one that's currently exposed to air and the one that's under the sea. It's just longer off the continental shelf, and you can see it made its way down the 200 meters of continental shelf. It's all evident. It's all there. So, taking it back, people are living precariously at sea level. They're next to the fresh water. That's where we'll always live. We'll move next to the fresh water. Now we live next to transport.
Look, we are a water adjacent species. That's certainly true. For the longest time, it was, well, why is the question? Well, the answer is very simple, right? Obviously, if you're near a freshwater source like a river, that's fresh water. That makes perfect sense, obviously. But there's also fish in the river, right? And there might be other flora and fauna that grows or comes near it. You can hunt, you can find fruit and berries and tubers and whatever. That's a river. Near an ocean settlement, there's also good fishing, obviously. There's salt, right? There's easily accessible salt if you wanted that. And trade, again, it's a lot easier to go along a river if you know what you're doing, because there's not a lot of energy you have to expend if you go with the stream, or if you can sail. Also a lot less energy than, carting things across the land. So it made sense to settle near, either large bodies of water or rivers, etc. And the thing is this, to Dave's point, at the end of the Younger Dryas, there was a massive flooding event. We know this now. I think, was it 100 meters? I think it's 100 meters or more, right? Maybe.
Yeah, they say
it's more. 300
feet is about 100 meters.
Yeah, 100 meters. So that's a lot of meters. Yeah. 100 of them. And what that means is that everything that was below that, right, that 100-meter marker is now no longer there. And if you look at the world today, and you look at, maybe you're living in a coastal city like Dave and I, we're near the coast. Dave is a bit higher than I am. But if you look across the land, and I look at my GPS positioning system, the Sydney Basin, on average, there's some undulations and such until you get to the Blue Mountains or down in tablelands in the south. But the basin of Sydney is maybe 30, 40 meters above sea level, something like that, right? There's some higher places. But 100 meters would wipe out Sydney completely. Gone.
100% it would.
Yeah. So now assume for a second that in the olden days, people were thinking much in the same way as we do. Ease of transport, ease of food, ease of everything. Let's be near the water. Coastlines are very popular. In fact, in Australia, I want to say it's probably 80%, if not more, of the population lives on the coast. That's it. There's very little happening inland. In any event, if there were a 100-meter rise, right, and that's what happened after the Younger Dryas melt event, all of those cities would be gone. And we see, the thing is this, right? We're looking at all the wrong places. The dry land that we have today, especially in Europe, and especially again Northern Europe, was completely uninhabitable. North America, completely uninhabitable. We won't find any ancient civilizations there because there was ice. The civilizations that existed during the Ice Age, this is important, during the Ice Age, right? When ice had most of the northern hemisphere locked, right? And a lot of ice, there was land ice, there was water ice. Obviously, it's the land ice that took all of the water out of the oceans. So sea levels were lower and exposed a lot of, relatively low-lying lands. In Europe, Great Britain, Ireland, Germany, Denmark, and the Baltics were all connected in what was called Doggerland, right? And we know people lived there and did, because there are a lot of dredging operations that happen, which is now the North Sea, and they bring up farming implements and a whole bunch of stuff from that depth, right? Yeah. So we know it was inhabited, right?
You can see it. I've got Google Earth up, and you can see You can see the low-lying area that would have been what the sea was at that point.
Bingo. Same thing for Southeast Asia, Sunderland. What is now Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, all the way really into even Australia. And there may have been a land bridge to Australia, potentially. That was all land, right? There was all an equatorial land. So it was warm. It was not as maybe not quite as warm as today because of all the atmospheric ice. And so anyway, the atmosphere was different, and generally I think it was probably cooler. Considering we were locked in an ice age, but it was a very nice climate. It was a climate that was conducive to human existence. Sunderland. And if you look at the Indian subcontinent and especially Sri Lanka, that would have been connected.
Yes,
Adams Bridge is literally, you can just walk across it, really. Madagascar, Africa, probably. Oh, perfect. And the Mediterranean was probably a lot lower as well. Okay. And generally speaking, across the equator, there was a lot more arable land. And I want to go as far as saying habitable arable land during the last ice age, where humans could build a civilization and thrive, was probably more. Right, the area, the surface area of that was more than what we have available to us today, considering all the deserts. Right, so look at North America, massive deserts. The top of North Africa, desert. Yes. Most of Australia, desert.
That's right.
And massive parts of Asia, especially around Mongolia and China, the Gobi Desert, massive deserts. Right, Siberia. Permafrost, tundra. It's not melting, but again, not really very habitable. So
also think about New Zealandia.
Yes,
which was this entire. I'm drawing in the outline that during the Ice Age, this was an island.
Correct. And I want to submit here.
Small strait, to be honest. So just basically off Bundaberg or Rockhampton, around that area. Is a very small strait which would have been so easy to traverse. There would have been a lot of tidal flow through there, but the right kind of boating, you'd be able to do that.
100%. If you look at the Pacific, you look at the islands that are there today. Lower the surface or the sea level, the surface of the ocean, 100 meters, and all of a sudden you have number one. Taller islands, number one. Number two, you have a lot more of them. So all of a sudden, the Pacific is not the obstacle it was back in the 15th, 16th, 17th century.
Teeming with real estate.
Bingo. And a lot more easily navigated. Very navigable. Because you could literally island hop all the way to South America. From Australia or from Asia, for that matter, it didn't really matter, and the abundance of islands would have been phenomenal, right? 100 meters.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the notion of an Ice Age civilization doesn't seem so far-fetched. And since we're talking about it, I want to just say two things. And first, before I say those, I want to say I really take my hat off to Graham Hancock and others like him. But he with his books, but now also with the two TV series that he produced, really put that conversation on the map. Number one, right? That's really great. But the two things I want to talk about is this. Number one, we officially, according to science, according to the official narrative, we have been around for 300,000 years, like this, co-inhabiting the planet with Neanderthal, with Cro-Magnon, with Flores Man, with and there were a couple others as well, right? So there's probably 5 or 6 genetic markers that are still left within us. So we know we're cohabiting with them. We know we interbred, right? They're not ancestors or distant cousins. No, they're like brothers and maybe not brothers and sisters, but we could breed with them. We could interbreed, right? Really important to understand. And we did interbreed with Neanderthal and a whole bunch of others as well. Okay. Now, 300,000 years. And our civilization, give or take, I want to be generous here, it took us 15,000 years. I'm going to count from the end of the last ice age. So, but 13, 14,000 years from the end of the last ice age to now to get where we are, with a lot of peaks and troughs in between. I mean, some civilizations reached really amazing heights in that time. I mean, the Roman Empire is one. Were they barbaric? Yes. Were they slaveholders? Yes. But they had some pretty good engineering feats. I mean, they were road builders and such. So there were, ups and downs. But here we are, pinnacle as we think of ourselves. Ha ha ha. But that took 15,000 years, let's say. So in 300,000 years, if my math is right, and my math is not my strong suit, Dave, we could have done that 20 times.
That's right.
20 times. And official narrative tells us that no. For 280,000 years, we're happy just to bang rocks together and and find tubers and worms and grubs and berries and just that'll do. No, I'm sorry, that's completely unbelievable. It makes no sense in any world that I inhabit. Human beings, as we are right now, would have been very similar to us. I mean, surely enough, different belief systems, but ultimately the same intelligence, the same ability to problem solve, the same ability to imagine a bigger world, the same ability to create pantheons of gods, and then have all those gods die and replace them with rationalism or whatever the case may be. But the point is, if you took a person from 300,000 years ago, anatomically modern human being, as a child, as a baby, and that baby grew up in our world, there would be zero difference in that child between that child that was taken from 300,000 years ago to the child that was born today. No difference. That's important to understand, right? Anatomically modern human, Homo sapiens sapiens. When I was a child, Dave, grew up in, similar to you, I imagine, the age of humanity was pegged at 100,000 years. But because of more and more finds that were, made during excavations, mostly luck, it's luck, that marker was pushed further and further back into the past. And I submit here again that in the future, it will be pushed back even further because we will learn more. I mean, Göbekli Tepe came out of nowhere. What happened here? It's like whack, whack.
Yeah, that's right. He went into that kicking and screaming, to be honest.
Yeah. So it stands to reason then that more than one civilization equivalent to ours, but maybe not in kind. I want to give you a simple example. So obviously we are addicted to electricity, right? Electricity for us is really important. And now the way we get electricity these days is by burning fossil fuel. That's our main engine of commerce. Our main engine of civilization is burning fossil fuel. That's how we get electricity. Imagine a civilization that discovers the piezoelectric effect before it does anything else. Because quartz, if you put pressure on quartz, it produces a charge, right? And again, the way we stumble across electricity, lightning, and then Benjamin Franklin having his experiments with the frogs and all kinds of things, we stumbled across. I mean, we are discoverers. We discover things, then we invent things, make things better, refine things. We might not understand what we do, like with quantum mechanics, no idea, but there it is, right? And now we're trying to kind of use it now. In the olden days, well before us, people would have been the same. Oh, piezoelectric effect. Now imagine a civilization that discovers that early on. I can create electricity by applying pressure to certain kinds of rocks. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Think about that. They actually walkways today, and I think it's China, Dave, but correct me if I'm wrong, where you can walk on the road or on the footpath, and that actually creates the street lighting that you have. Just a motion on those rocks. And there are other effects that create electricity as well. I mean, friction, like static electricity, etc. Maybe people discovered electromagnetism before they discovered anything else, and maybe they used that to create electromagnetic engines. Forget fossil fuel, right? And maybe there are avenues of science and discovery we just haven't walked down, but they did. So we're looking for markers of ancient civilization, right? But we're looking for our markers. That's wrong. We can't be looking for our markers because they may not be the markers for our ancestors. Similarly, when we look for extraterrestrial life, we're looking for things that we know. We're looking for things that we can do, right? Or if a civilization has reached a certain stage, it will do this, this, and this. No, that's what we did.
That's
another civilization. Sorry,
you're absolutely right. Yeah. It's a mistake. To believe that everyone's going to follow our path.
100%. We have to
expand. Our path is driven by money.
Well, largely, yes. In fact, the last 200 years, I want to say, more, but the last 200 years were exclusively driven by money. That's Tesla, if we had followed Tesla, we would be living in a very different world today.
And he wasn't after any money at all.
No, that was that. See, Dave, the funny thing is, you're right, and that was his downfall. That was the thing that broke his back, right? That he was not a businessman.
That's right.
But he was interested in making the world a better place. What a great ambition. So now imagine that people like that would have existed 15, 20, 30, 100, 200,000 years ago, discovering all kinds of things. I mean, we have legends left. I mean, we're talking about, in the ancient Indian Vedas, for example, they talk about Vimanas.
That's right.
Which are using things like orichalco, a metal we don't know. It's some substance. They're talking about mercury that powers the engines as well. How, again, we don't know, right? But my point is that these legends, these stories that come to us, maybe they're not made up, right? Maybe they're just memories of what went before. I mean, flying carpets, sound-activated doors, open sesame. That's a sound-activated door where I come from, okay? Does it sound like a fairy tale 100 years ago? Absolutely. When they first translated this, oh, what a fantastical tale this is. Today?
Now, we have them at public access to most buildings. Automated doors.
Yeah, you wouldn't even raise an eyebrow.
In fact, you don't even have to say anything anymore.
No, exactly. Flying carpets. I mean, we're now creating one-person flying machines, right?
That's correct.
And depending on the science, again, science and technology and knowledge would have taken quite possibly, and I want to say probably, a very different path to the path that we took. Okay, I'm pretty sure. And the funny thing is, the Chinese were the first to invent gunpowder. Yes, they used it in warfare, but it was more. It was the usage was more prevalent in, I guess, fireworks and such. So it took the Europeans to really create the armaments industry that we see today. The guns, the ever faster loading gun, the bigger gun, the better gun, the more deadly gun. Right? I guess the Chinese, for some reason, didn't think that way. So you can see even civilizations that are cohabiting right now are not the same. Right? Let's go back 50 years, 60 years. Actually, let's go to World War II. High-level civilizations creating the atom bomb, flying planes, on the verge of space flight, right? In World War II, because rockets are being invented. At the same time, you've got very, what we like to call primitive people living in Africa and Asia, in the islands, living almost on a what we would call a Stone Age level, right? Now, cohabiting, again, on the same planet, completely different levels of achievement as far as civilization is concerned. I do believe that's exactly what would have happened in the past as well. Some peoples would have advanced faster, further, for whatever reason, some advantages they had, who knows? Whereas other people would have, stayed on a less developed level, right? and maybe all the people that developed and were technologically advanced, they all perished, and it was only the people that we would call primitive survived, and only those stories survived and were passed down, right? Because that's just what happens sometimes, just luck of the draw, right? If there's a cataclysm, a catastrophe, and I mean, if you look at it today, even in our technological societies, Dave, if there were a Carrington event, if there were a massive flood,
right,
and it took out, it took out, let's say 60% of the population, right? It's a luck of the draw, depending on where you are and how you are and who you are. It'd be really, we don't know who survives. However, all the things that we have, the computer we're using right now, right? I've got my computer here, my work computer is here. I've got my telephone over here. There's a microphone right there. I've got electric light up there. There's like a little plasma lamp over here. I've got an air filter. I've got an ionizer. I've got a whole bunch of stuff in my room, right? Can I build any of it?
Nope.
No, I cannot. I can't build. Now, I understand how they function. I know the principles and the theory. But if there were a cataclysm and it destroyed the means of production and the means of resource gathering and labor distribution, et cetera, and I stood there, like literally just surviving, I could not build any of these things because it took generations to build up the capacity, knowledge, and know-how to build all the things that we have today, right?
Yeah.
Even if you could build it, even if you had the blueprints in your head, right, you wouldn't have the specialized materials.
That's right.
Right. You actually physically couldn't do it. I mean, you didn't have the mining equipment. You don't have the refining equipment. You don't have the smelting. You don't have the factories. You can't shape it. You can't get all the components together. And if one component is not there, guess what? The thing is not going to work. And that's I think what happened in the past. Because if that were to happen to us, Dave, then
we would the Stone Age.
It would become about survival.
Actually, if there were the Amish, Mickey.
Yeah, well, you see, now the Amish said, "No, I don't want to touch anything past 18 something or other."
Sure.
So no zippers, no this. I mean, the strict ones, and Mennonites are similar. They would survive much better if there were a cataclysm of some sort. You know why? Because they can do all the things they need to do to live.
They already do it.
They do it. That's what they're doing every day, right? You know what they do when they want to build a house? They build a house. No, I know. I'm sorry. Let me explain. So the land is either communally owned or whatever the case may be. But the point is, there are no permissions. They don't have to go to any government organizations and get a building permit. Now, my son is marrying your daughter. Why don't we all get together from our village and we all help them build the house, raise the barn? So all the community gets together and they're building the house, they're building the barn. It might take them a day, a week, whatever, and it's done. It's a communal effort. And they didn't. I mean, they got the materials for it, but everybody helped build the house. That's how we used to operate. Now, think about all the things that you need to live. How many of those things can you do by yourself? Can you find water? I want to say yes. You probably could find water, and you're probably smart enough to boil it before you drink it. Let's say you are.
The problem is finding something to boil it in.
So let's say you have a pot. You survived. The pot survived. You survived. Great. I further assume you can build a fire. I hope you can, but I assume that you can. Okay. Now these are the basics of survival. Fire, right? Critical for us. Unless you're living near fresh water, like a spring, like a fresh water source that is super fresh, like not contaminate anything, you don't have to boil it, drink straight out of the ground. If you have that, ace is good for you. Let's say you don't. So you need to find shelter, you have to make fire. Okay, all right, so you can do all of that. You found water, great. So you're not going to die in 3 days, you can drink. Wonderful. You got a shelter, excellent. Now, how do you have to find food? Because today, you're going to get your food from the supermarket, aren't you? Or the grocer, or if you're really trendy, you're going to a local deli, and that's where you do grocery shopping because you got money. Good for you. But you don't have chickens, probably. You probably don't have anything in your garden that you can eat. Maybe some herbs. Possibly. Maybe there's a pond near you. Do you know how to fish? Do you know how to hunt? If not, you're going to be vegetarian very quickly. right? Because the only thing you can find, the only thing that you'll be hunting will be berries because they can't run away. but do you know which berries to eat? Which ones are going to kill you? Which mushrooms will kill you, right? So there's a lot of survival lore that we simply no longer have. Right now, if you're lucky, maybe you've got 10 years worth of MREs or canned food or whatever the case may be, right? You're a prepper. If you're a prepper, then good for you. The vast majority of people living in our civilization wouldn't survive a week. They wouldn't survive a week because we cannot imagine civilization no longer existing, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Right? We're just complacent. And
what's the magic number, Mickey, of the amount of people in your community where work starts to drop off but production is higher? There's a magic number. Somewhere between 15 and 25 people.
Yeah.
More, and you're now consuming too much of your produce. So there's these little scale parts that work, and you don't want to be the person who's working 100% of the time, your own output, and still being insufficient in the amount of output. So you need to build a community and make it work, and make it work for you and everyone. Everyone has to be bought in and do that work. Remember, we spoke last show about it takes a community to raise your children. I always think, this is me, I can't help myself. If I had a stone chisel, if I had a chisel for stone and I had a hammer, what would I record? What would I think would be important to record in the stone? Say you had a huge flat rock face ready to go, and it's now the end of the world. Click your fingers, end of the world. That's it. What would you write down that you could remember, or what over time? You're not going to put all your effort into doing that. And it would be like the guy they found in Holy Grail. It's the castle of. What do you mean? Well, that's what it says. Well, he's hardly going to write that as he's dying, is he?
No, but that's actually a really good point, Dave. I mean, would you even be in a position to leave anything like that? Would you have to spare time to leave anything like that? And then, yeah. But what would make sense? I mean, you couldn't use your language because that'd be gone. Could you use some kind of scientific notation? That's probably a good idea, but what kind of simplified scientific notation, right?
I'm going to tell you the easiest thing to do is make it like an IKEA instruction manual. There's no words. Fair. It's universally accepted. This is what you do. And then if you think about how you would do it, and then you apply to what you see other ancient cultures having achieved, bang on.
Yeah.
It's really what they would. That's how they could communicate. It's how they've been able to pass on their information from then through the eons.
Yeah, and a lot of the pictograms, let's call them, a lot of the graphical representations that we find and understand are exactly like that. Very simple, very clear, right? No ambiguity. Cave paintings, petroglyphs, it doesn't really matter. There's a raft of things. Some are mysteries, we don't know. Others are very clear. Others are clearly forms of writing. Unfortunately, of course, if you don't have the key, you're completely lost, right? I mean, we still wouldn't know anything about hieroglyphics if we hadn't found the Rosetta Stone, okay? Which had, I think it was Roman, it was hieroglyphics, or Latin, I should say, and another language, I think it was Greek from memory. But the point is, it was like a tourist marker like a marker for tourists, essentially.
That's right.
In three languages, essentially. So clearly there was travel back in the Roman Empire, and it was necessary. When you go to an airport, you've got English, French, German, Spanish, Chinese, or whatever. You're usually, depending on where you are in the world, there's more than one language that you can fall back upon. and in similar ancient times, right? What we need to find, ideally, and I'm hoping this is. Let me bring it to AI, Dave, because Dave and I we're going to use AI to get to you, to get to you. Maybe AI, and I'm looking at, obviously, not necessarily, maybe Claude, maybe ChatGPT, maybe the next iteration. Why don't we feed these lost ancient languages, such as they are, into AI and see what they do with it? Do you know what I want to do? Remember the Voynich manuscript?
Yes.
I want to feed the Voynich manuscript into an AI engine.
Nice.
That's what I want to do. Right, and then I want that AI to, okay, well, is this a language, a natural? Because we think it's a natural language, the way it's structured, right?
It appears to match all of our determinations of what a natural language should look like, even though we don't understand it. It works.
Yeah, and luckily, because the Voynich manuscript, and if you don't know what it is, we actually did a show on it. You can look it up on YouTube. It also has illustrations. So the illustrations, which are actually quite intricate and quite colorful and well enough done. So I wonder if the AI can correlate the illustrations with the text if you feed all of it into the AI. I'd love to see that. I have the Voynich manuscript, Dave.
Yes, you do.
No, not the real one. No, I don't.
Not the actual one.
No,
I've put it on screen anyway.
That's not the Mona Lisa. It's right behind me. What? No. So I wonder if I can we input? It's because it's PDF. Can we input that into
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Dude, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say what it spits out. I'll get some time off and do that, because
scholars have worked out some of the letters.
They think.
Yes,
correct.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Well, it's hard to know unless you got the whole thing, right? Oh, that's a grrr, and that's a
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Sure it is.
But look, the diagrams look amazing in it, don't they?
Look, very intricate, and
it's got a dragon.
It's got dragon. It's got plants and what we think might be fruits, but and very detailed. So this is like a naturalist handbook in a way.
Exactly,
some of it. Of course, none of these plants exist that we know. Okay, but they're drawn with the level of detail that you would expect someone to undertake if they did try to capture a real thing, and then maybe have some annotations and explaining text next to it. I don't know. They got naked ladies in a bath. That's interesting.
I had to quickly flick past those, but that's all right.
Fair enough. But yeah, so I think it's really interesting to. Actually, this is a really great idea. I'll do that. But let's get back to our civilizations here, right? Why are we so against, Dave? Now, I really want an answer here, in your opinion. Why are we so against the concept that there may have been civilizations not like ours, but similar to ours in achievement, maybe higher levels of achievement? But why are we so dead set against entertaining that possibility?
Because there isn't some big city on some, island somewhere that we would have built today that's really old, that has remnants from them. You've got to understand that 100,000 years of us abandoning this planet because of disaster, even the concrete breaks down. 100,000 years, there's no evidence at all that we were even here. 100,000. And if you think 300,000 years is the length of time that, not think, but if that's what the smart people on the planet think, then this is the third time we could have been here. So, second time if you think about 100,000 years. So, is it possible? Yeah, totally. Even our nuclear power plants going into meltdown and what would be left after 100,000 years is not even barely detectable on a site on a machine. Yeah, not
Absolutely.
even.
Yeah.
So if we are trying to look anywhere for any signs that there was a previous civilization, the only thing that lasts are stone. Because stone can be millions of years old. Concrete can't. Unusually, it can't. So that was a big surprise to me. Even iron, cast iron, it just breaks down. There's nothing left of it in 100,000 years. And so the disappointing part of it is, oh, I wish we just, magically found some city somewhere or underground or something where it's all perfectly intact. All we do is flick a switch, because they had switches apparently, and it all comes to light as illuminated. We can enjoy it, but it's not going to happen. So that's what I think, Mackie, and I know that since we're not going to leave anything that's going to last any amount of time, except for some of those stone granite buildings that we've built, apart from those, nothing else. Wiped clean.
And that's exactly right. In fact, excuse me, if we enter the glacial period, the glaciers would shear everything off at ground level.
Yeah, that's
right.
To start.
Yeah, but you're right though. If we build in stone, granite, ideally, that is likely to remain. Again, if it isn't, shorn off by a glacier, but certainly our glass, concrete, even steel would vanish very, very quickly. And funnily enough, places like the pyramids, the Baalbek temple, the Jupiter temple in Baalbek, Pumapunku, Tiahuanaco, places where the monolithic builders were doing whatever they were doing, those would survive much better than anything we have built. It's really, if you think about it, you go, okay, that's a bit sobering. Yeah, but it's true, right?
It also makes you think, just how old are those monolithic builders' sites?
Right, and that's the billion-dollar question, because we can't really. Sorry, we can date stone. We can, yes, we can, but we can't date when it was worked.
That's right.
Okay, or when it was placed, unless there's some organic material underneath. If there is, sweet bananas, because you could argue that this bug that was squashed under the rock didn't crawl there after and squashed itself.
That's right.
So not likely, not likely. So that's definitely that would be great if you could somehow do that. But look, these ancient monuments, because that's what they are, could have survived a number of cataclysms. They may be remnants not from the last civilization,
the prior one.
Could be. In fact, the last civilization may have been scratching their head just as much as we did.
That's right.
And if you look at some of the weathering on this stuff, and always bearing in mind that some of it was buried in sand or earth, and only recently on earth, and that's when you see more of the weathering. But if you look at some of the weathering, I mean, the Sphinx, look at the Sphinx, the weathering on the Sphinx, carved out of one piece of rock, right? But it was buried for most of the time that we knew it. So the weathering must have occurred at some point when it was exposed to the elements, right? And again, when was that? Well, like that, probably 14,000, 15,000 years ago. So the Sphinx may come or may have been built at that point. And this is where it gets interesting when you look at some of the astronomical data and you correlate it with the monuments, because 14,000 years ago, the Sphinx would have been facing the constellation of Leo. And arguably, you could say that the Sphinx is disproportionate. The body is much larger in comparison to its head, so chances are the head was recarved. Chances are it actually was a lion's head, and it would make sense that it would be facing the constellation of Leo, always assuming that the ancients had the similar set of constellations that we do. And
Orion's belt has the same geometry in the three stars as do the three pyramids.
100% correct, my friend.
Accurately. Yeah, yeah.
And it is as above, so below.
Yes.
Right, which is I won't go into that, but let's just say there's a group of people that remember that. So it certainly comes to a point here, right? To a sharp point where you see that you have to engage all disciplines if you want to find the truth, if you want to find out what happened. You can't just be an archaeologist. You can't just be a biologist. You can't just be a geologist. You can't just be an astronomer, right? You need to be the person that brings them all together, right? And then from all the disciplines, and you have to go where the science leads you. Wherever the science leads you, you need to follow, irrespective of your belief system or this doesn't fit here. No. When the science says something, then you have to go, okay, well, let's follow it, see where it goes. Once you bring all the disciplines together and we look at it, we study it, if you look at the wave patterns or the dune patterns across Australia, it looks like a big flood came across it, for example. Impact sites on the planet. What does that tell us? What are they called? Not the Badlands up in North America. They're called I always get it wrong. Thank you, sir. The Scablands. Right? Now, the official story is that it took eons to form. The unofficial and more likely story is that it happened in an afternoon. Well, not in an afternoon, but in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Simply by the way it cut through it all. And then the massive wave formations that you have as well in the sand near there. Right? So we need to understand that a couple of things I want people to take away from this. One, don't look for what's familiar to find evidence for previous civilizations. Two, look in places that would have been habitable 20, 50, 100,000 years ago. Okay? And thirdly, look at the natural formations, or what you think are natural formations, and then question yourself, how did they actually form? What happened here? And what does this look like? What can I compare it to? You know, if have you played with your child at the beach? If you have, you probably built sandcastles, right? My kids love that. And water runs through it, right? And if you've got a lot of water running through it, there's certain things that happen, right? And if you look at the Scablands, right? And you built a little thing at the beach and the tide comes in and all of a sudden that looks like the Scablands, right? Washed away very quickly. But it leaves a very characteristic kind of fissuring in the earth, right? And when we look for ancient civilizations and evidence thereof, they mightn't have been completely Homo sapiens either, okay? Because we cohabited the world with other human species. Some very tall, some very, very short, some very, quite robust, if you will. So expectations are what kills our research. We can't have any expectations. And I hate it when people say, all the experts agree, or common sense says, or Occam's razor, right? Everybody knows that, Mackie. Dave, Occam's razor.
Oh, yeah. Quiet, you.
Oh, trouble you.
Quiet, you.
And this is just, it only has one purpose when people say that. It's to shut you up. It's to shut you up.
It's to make their following statement more believable.
Yes.
And you go, well, just send me one link.
Yeah.
Oh, but everyone knows it. No. You look it up and then send me the link that you're using to back up your information, and we'll listen. I'll listen. Mackie, I'll send it to Mackie. We can both read it. In fact, we'll read it on air. And maybe
100%.
With that information, we'll change our position on it. And does it ever happen? Do we ever get a link?
Not yet.
Oh, remember that one link we got?
Yeah, we have time. There was a flaming war on Facebook that I engaged in foolishly. And back and forth. I don't even remember.
Troll. Yeah.
I did. Oh, boy.
In fact, you knew the person anyway, right?
I did. Yeah, well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well,
the trolls ain't well that day. No. I can't even remember what we were discussing, but essentially I said something and he said something and back and forth, and then he sends me this link. He goes there, as though this was the coup d'etat. I've won.
That's right.
So I go there and I read it. Initially, it seemed like, yeah, okay, you win.
The headline announced his point of view.
Right, and so I read through the whole thing, and lo and behold, the entire thread proved my point. Okay, and I said to him, "Did you read this, brother?" Look, I didn't hear back. That was the end of our flame war.
That's right.
But you can't just Google something. Oh, that's something I should use. Plunk it in there without reading it. That's a really big mistake. Wow, that was quick. Thank you so much for listening to Platos Cave. We'll be back on Sunday with Shiny Side Out. A new show cycle. Don't know what yet. Dave and I will discuss that. Don't go anywhere. Something else is going to come up. It'll be awesome. Donate if you can. Like if you like it. Subscribe if you can. But most of all, Dave,
be safe.